Course in Miracles, Chapter 1, Miracle Principle number 43. A major contribution of miracles is their strength in releasing you from your misplaced sense of isolation, deprivation, and lack. Miracles are affirmations that we are all family of God, and miracles are a state of completion and abundance. Whatever is true and whatever is real is eternal, which means whatever is true cannot change or be changed. The soul is therefore unalterable because the soul is already perfect. But the mind can elect the level the mind chooses to serve. And the only limit which is put on your mind's choice is that your mind cannot serve two masters. The mind, if it elects to do so, becomes a medium by which the soul creates along the line of its own creation. If the mind does not freely elect to create along the lines of its own creation, then the mind retains its creative potential. But the mind places itself under tyrannous rather than genuinely authoritative control. And as a result, the mind imprisons, because such are the dictates of tyrants. To change your mind means to place your mind at the disposal of true authority. I place my mind at the disposal of true authority. The miracle is thus a sign that your mind has chosen to be led by the Christ in you, in the service of the Christ in you. And the abundance of the Christ in you is the natural result of choosing to follow the Christ in you. All shallow roots must be uprooted, because all shallow roots are not deep enough to sustain you. The illusion that shallow roots can be deepened and thus made to hold is one of the distortions on which the reversal of the golden rule rests. And as these shallow roots, as these false underpinnings are given up, your equilibrium is temporarily experienced as unstable. However, the fact is that nothing is less stable than the orientation you had, which is an orientation that is upside down. And nor can anything which holds your orientation upside down really be conducive to greater stability. Miracle Principle 44. Miracles arise from a miraculous state of mind. By being one, this state of mind goes out to anyone, even without the awareness of the miracle worker themselves. The impersonal nature of miracles is because the atonement, the plan for healing itself is one, because this healing plan unites all creations with their Creator. Miracle Principle 45. The miracle is an expression of an inner awareness of the Christ in you and the acceptance of the healing plan of the Christ in you. And when you accept the healing plan, your healing plan from the Christ in yourself, then your mind is in a state of grace, and then your mind naturally becomes gracious, both to the host within and the stranger without. By bringing in the stranger becomes your brother, your sister, your equal. 46. A miracle is never lost. A miracle touches many people you do not even know, and sometimes a miracle produces undreamed of changes in forces of which you are not even aware. That is not your concern, because the miracle will always bless you. The miracles you are not asked to perform have not lost their value. The miracles you are not asked to perform are still expressions of your own state of grace, but the action aspect of the miracle should be controlled by the Christ in you, because of the Christ in you's complete awareness of the whole healing plan. The impersonal nature of miracle-mindedness ensures your grace, but only your true self, the Christ in you, is in a position to know where grace can be bestowed. (47) Miracle-mindedness means miracle readiness. Readiness means that you should always keep your perceptions straight, so that you will always be ready, willing, and able. Readiness means that you should always keep your perceptions straight, so that you will always be ready, willing, and able. These are the essentials for, quote, listen, learn, and do. The essentials for the mantra listen, learn, and do is: you must be ready to listen. You must be willing to learn. And you must be able to do. Only the last part, being able to do, is involuntary, because it is the application of miracles which must be controlled by the Christ in you. The other two application of miracles, ready to listen and willing to learn, those are the voluntary aspects of miracle-mindedness, and only those two applications of the miracles are up to you. The being ready to listen and willing to learn, those two aspects of the application of miracles, only those two are up to you. The action aspect of doing miracles, of the application of miracles, only the doing aspect of miracle-mindedness should be Christ-controlled. 48. Awe is an inappropriate response to miracles. Revelation is literally unspeakable because revelation is an experience of unspeakable love. Awe should be reserved for revelation. Awe is perfectly and correctly applicable to revelation. Awe is not appropriate for miracles because a state of awe is worshipful, and a state of awe implies that one of a lesser order stands before a greater one. And it's only the case that one of a lesser order stands before a greater one only when a soul stands before its creator. Souls are perfect creations, and souls experience awe only in the presence of the creator of perfection. The miracle, on the other hand, is a sign of love among equals. The miracle is a sign of love among equals. And equals cannot be in awe of one another because awe implies inequality. And so awe is therefore an inappropriate reaction to me. An elder brother is entitled to respect for their greater experience, and an elder brother is entitled to a reasonable amount of obedience for the elder brother's greater wisdom. And the elder brother is also entitled to love because the elder brother is a brother, and the elder brother is also entitled to devotion if the elder brother is devoted. It is only my devotion that entitles me to your devotion. There is nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The main difference between us as yet is that I have nothing else besides what comes from God. And this leaves me in a state of true holiness, which is only a potential in you. The quote, "No man cometh unto the Father but by me," that is among the most misunderstood statements in the Bible. It does not mean that I am in any way separate or different from you, except in time, which really doesn't exist at all. Actually, that quotation is more meaningful if it is considered on a vertical rather than a horizontal axis. Regarded along the vertical axis, man stands below me and I stand below God. And in the process of rising up, I am higher. And in the process of rising up, I am higher because without me, the distance between God and man would be too great for you to encompass. I bridge the distance as an elder brother to man on the one hand, and I bridge the distance as a child of God on the other side of the bridge. I bridge the distance as an elder brother to man on the one hand, and as a child of God on the other hand. My devotion to my brothers and sisters is what has placed me in charge of the family of God. The family of God which I can render complete only to the extent to which I can share the family of God. And my devotion to you and my devotion to all my brothers and sisters is what has placed me in charge of the family of God, which I can render complete only to the extent to which I can share the family of God. This may appear to contradict the statement, quote, I and my Father are one, but there are still separate parts in the statement in recognition that the Father is greater. The original statement was, quote, are of one kind. I and my Father are of one kind, was the original statement to that, quote, I and my Father are one. The original statement was, I and my Father are of one kind. The Holy Spirit is the bringer of revelations. Revelations are indirectly inspired by me because I am close to the Holy Spirit and I am alert to the revelation readiness of my brothers and sisters. I can thus bring down to my brothers and sisters more than my brothers and sisters can draw down to themselves. Miracle Principle 49. The Holy Spirit is the highest communication medium. Miracles do not involve this type of communication because miracles are temporary communication devices. And when you return to your original form of communication with God, then the need for miracles is over. When you return to your original form of communication with God, then the need for miracles is over. The Holy Spirit mediates higher to lower communication, keeping the direct channel from God to man open for revelation. Revelation is not reciprocal. Revelation is always from God to man. The miracle is reciprocal because the miracle involves equality. Miracle Principle number 50. The miracle is a learning device which lessens the need for time. In the longitudinal or horizontal plane, the recognition of the true equality of all the members of the family of God appears to involve almost endless time. However, the sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perception which the miracle entails introduces an interval from which the doer and the receiver both emerge much farther along in time than they would otherwise have been. The miracle thus has the unique property of shortening time by rendering the space of time that the miracle occupies unnecessary. There is no relationship between the time a miracle takes and the time a miracle covers. The miracle substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years. And the miracle substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years by the underlying recognition of perfect equality and perfect guiltlessness between the doer and the receiver on which the miracle rests. We said before that the miracle abolishes time, and the miracle abolishes time by a process of collapsing time, which means abolishing certain intervals within time. And the miracle abolishes certain intervals within time, however, within the larger temporal sequence. And so the miracle establishes an out-of-pattern time interval which is not under the usual laws of time. And only in this sense is the miracle timeless. By collapsing time, the miracle literally saves time. Much as daylight saving time saves time. Daylight saving time rearranges the distribution of light. Miracle Principle 51. The miracle is the only device which man has at its immediate disposal for controlling time. Only revelation transcends time, because revelation has nothing to do with time at all. The miracle is much like the body, in that both the miracle and the body are learning aids which aim at facilitating a state in which the miracle and the body are unnecessary. When the soul's original state of direct communication with God is reached, neither the body nor the miracle serves any purpose. Now, while you believe you are in a body, however, you can choose between loveless and miraculous channels of expression. You can make an empty shell, but you cannot express nothing at all. You can wait, you can delay, you can paralyze yourself, you can reduce your creativity to almost nothing, and you can even introduce a developmental arrest or even a regression. But you cannot abolish your creativity. You can destroy your medium of communication, your body, but you cannot destroy your potential. Man was not created by their own free will alone. Only what you create is yours to decide. The basic decision of the miracle-minded is not to wait on time any longer than is necessary. Time can waste as well as be wasted. So the miracle worker, therefore, accepts the time control factor gladly, because the miracle worker recognizes that every collapse of time brings all men closer to the ultimate release from time, in which you and the Creator are one. Equality does not imply homogeneity now. When everyone recognizes that they have everything, then individual contributions to the family of God will no longer be necessary when everyone recognizes that they have everything. Individual contributions to the family of God will no longer be necessary. When the healing plan of man has been completed, all talents will be shared by everyone. And that's because God is not partial. All of God's children have God's total love, and all of God's gifts are freely given to everyone alike. The quote, "Except ye become as little children," means that unless you fully recognize your complete dependence on God, then you cannot know the real power of the child in its true relationship with its Creator. And so you who want peace, you can find it only by complete forgiveness. You never really wanted peace before, so there was no point in being told how to achieve it. No learning is acquired by anyone unless they want to learn it, and unless they believe that that learning in some way is what they need. While the concept of lack does not exist in the creation of God, the concept of lack is very apparent in the creations of man. The concept of lack is, in fact, the essential difference between your creations and God's creations. A need implies lack by definition. A need involves the recognition, and a lack involves the recognition that you would be better off in a state which is somehow different from the one that you are in now, is what a lack implies. Until the quote separation, which is really a better term than quote the fall, nothing was lacking. Until the separation, nothing was lacking. And to say that before the fall or before the separation nothing was lacking means that man had no needs at all. If you had not deprived yourself, you would have never experienced needs based on lack. But after the separation, needs became the most powerful source of motivation for human action. All behavior is essentially motivated by needs. But behavior itself is not a divine attribute. The body is the mechanism for behavior. And the belief that you could be better off in a state somehow different from the one you are in, that is the reason why you have this mechanism called the body at your disposal. The belief that you could be better off in a state somehow different from the one you are in, that's the reason why you have a body, a mechanism for behavior now at your disposal. And each person acts and behaves according to the particular hierarchy of needs that they establish for themselves. And your hierarchy of needs, in turn, depends on your perception of what you are. That is, your perception of what you lack. Your needs, your hierarchy of needs that you establish for yourself, depends on your perception of what you lack. But a sense of separation from God is the only lack that you really need to correct. And this sense of separation from God would never have occurred if you had not distorted your perception of truth, which means if you had not seen yourself as lacking. The concept of any sort of need hierarchy arose because having made this fundamental error of lack, you had already fragmented yourself into levels with different needs. As you integrate, you become one, which means as you integrate, your needs become one accordingly. As you integrate, you become one. And as you integrate, your needs become one. And a unified need, having only one need, because you only have one lack, which is a sense of separation from God, that produces unified action. Because unified need produces a lack of ambivalence. The concept of a hierarchy of needs, which is a corollary to the original error that you can be separated from God, that concept of need hierarchy requires correction at its own level before the error of perceiving levels at all can be corrected. You cannot behave effectively while you operate at split levels. You cannot behave effectively while you operate at a hierarchy of needs. However, while you operate at split levels, hierarchies of need, correction must be introduced from the bottom up. While you believe that you have a hierarchy of needs, correction must be introduced from the bottom of your needs up. And the correction of your belief in a hierarchy of needs that comes from your misperception of lack is because now you are operating in space where concepts such as up and down are meaningful. Ultimately, space is as meaningless as time. And the concept is really one of space-time belief. The physical world exists only because man can use the physical world to correct their unbelief, which placed man in the world, the physical world, originally. You can never control the effects of fear yourself because you made fear and you believe in what you made. In attitude, then, though not in content, you resemble your own Creator, who has perfect faith in its creations because it created them. Belief in a creation produces its existence. In attitude, then, you resemble your Creator. You have perfect faith in your creations because you created them. Belief in your creations produces your creation's existence. In this way, you are like God in attitude, though not in content. You create your creations by believing in them, by having perfect faith in your creations. And that is why a man can believe in what no one else thinks is true. It's true for you because it was made by you. It's true for you because it was made by you. Every aspect of fear proceeds from upside-down perception. Every aspect of fear proceeds from upside-down perception. The more truly creative devote their efforts to correcting perceptual distortions. The neurotic devotes their life, their efforts, to compromise. The more truly creative devote their efforts to correcting perceptual distortions, and the neurotic devotes their efforts to compromise. The psychotic tries to escape by establishing the certain truth of their own errors. And it is most difficult to free the psychotic by ordinary means, because the psychotic is more consistent in their own denial of truth. The miracle, however, makes no such distinctions. The miracle corrects errors because the distinctions are errors. The miracle makes no distinctions in the forms of the denial of truth. The miracle corrects the denials of truth because there are errors. Thus, the next point is to remember. The next point to remember about miracles is that the miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. The miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. The miracle is a device for perception correction, effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. The miracle makes no distinction among degrees of misperception. The miracle is a device for perception correction, effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. This is the miracle's true indiscriminateness. Christ-controlled miracles are selective only in the sense that the miracles are directed towards those who can use them for themselves. Since the miracle being directed towards those who can use the miracle for themselves, this makes it inevitable that the miracles will extend and that the miracle workers will extend miracles to others. And in this way, a strong chain of healing is welded. However, love's control takes no account at all of the magnitude of the miracle itself, because the concept of size exists in a plane that is itself unreal. Since the miracle aims at restoring the awareness of reality, then the miracle would hardly be useful if the miracle were bound by the laws which govern the error that the miracle aims to correct. Only man makes this kind of mistake. And it is an example of the foolish consistency which man's own false beliefs have engendered. The power and strength of man's creative will must be understood before the real meaning of denial can be appreciated and relinquished. The real meaning of denial being appreciated and relinquished is not mere negation. It is a positive miscreation. While the miscreation is necessarily believed in by the error's maker, the error does not exist at all at the level of true creation. Miracle Principle 53. The miracle compares what you have made with the higher level of creation, accepting only what is in accord with the higher level of creation as true, and then rejecting the discordant as false. The miracle compares what you have made with the truth, the higher level of creation, and the miracle accepts what you have made that is in accord with the higher level of creation, and the miracle rejects what you have made that is not in accordance with the higher level of creation. All aspects of fear are untrue, because all aspects of fear do not exist at the higher creative level, and therefore all aspects of fear do not exist at all. And to whatever extent you are willing to submit your beliefs to this test, to that extent are your perceptions corrected. In sorting out the false from the true, the miracle proceeds along the following lines. If perfect love casts out fear, and if fear exists, then there is not perfect love. But only perfect love really exists. And so, if there is fear, then it creates a state which does not exist. This is the test that you are to submit your beliefs to. And to the extent that you submit your beliefs to this test, to that extent will your perceptions be corrected. And the perception test is, if perfect love casts out fear, and if fear exists, then there is not perfect love. But only perfect love really exists. So if there is fear, it creates a state which does not exist. Believe this, and you will be free. Now, only God can establish this solution, this truth test, this perception correction solution. Only God can establish this perception correction solution. And this is God's gift. Chapter 1, Section 2, Distortions of Miracle Impulses. You are involved in unconscious distortions, which are producing a dense cover over miracle impulses, making miracle impulses hard to reach your consciousness. Your unconscious distortions are producing a dense cover over your miracle impulses. Your unconscious distortions are making it hard for miracles to reach your consciousness. The nature of any interpersonal relationship is limited or defined by what you want that relationship to do. Relating, being in a relationship, is a way of achieving an outcome. Because the nature of any relationship is limited or defined by what you want that relationship to do. Because relating is a way of achieving an outcome. The danger of defenses lies in the propensity of defenses for holding misperceptions rigidly in place. All actions which stem from reverse thinking or distorted thinking, all actions which stem from misperceptions, are literally the behavioral expressions of those who know not what they do. A rigid orientation can be extremely reliable, even if it's upside down, even if it's based on false perception. A rigid orientation can be extremely reliable. In fact, the more consistently upside down your orientation, your perception is, the more reliable your perception is. However, validity is still the ultimate goal, which reliability can only serve. Hostility, triumph, vengeance, self-debasement, and all kinds of expressions of lack of love are often very clearly seen in the fantasies which accompany them. Hostility, triumph, vengeance, self-debasement, and all kinds of expressions of lack of love are often very clearly seen in the fantasies which accompany misperceptions. Distortions. But it is a profound error to imagine that because these misperceptions, these distortions, these fantasies are so frequent or occur so reliably, that this implies validity of these fantasies, these perceptual distortions, these misperceptions. Just because these misperceptions and fantasies and distortions are so frequent and reliable does not imply that they are valid or true. Remember that while validity implies reliability, the relationship is not reversible, because you can be wholly reliable about something completely consistent and entirely wrong. While a reliable instrument does measure something, what use is it unless you discover what the quote something is? This course in miracles, then, will concentrate on validity and let reliability fall naturally into place. The confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses is a major source of perceptual distortion, because the confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses induces rather than straightens out the basic level of confusion which underlies the perception of all those who seek happiness with the instruments of this world. Confusion underlies the perception of all those who seek happiness with the instruments of this world. Inappropriate physical impulses or misdirected miracle impulses result in conscious guilt if expressed, and depression if the physical impulses are denied. Inappropriate physical impulses result in conscious guilt if expressed, and depression, unconscious guilt, if the physical impulses are denied. All real pleasure comes from doing God's will. All real pleasure comes from doing love's will. And this is because not doing love's will is a denial of yourself. Denial of error, when you are denying being in denial, denying, suppressing, or repressing the error, results in projection. Denial results in projection. Correction of error brings release. When you deny and suppress and repress the error, the only result is projection. But the correction of error brings release. The quote, "Lead us not into temptation." It means, don't let us deceive ourselves into believing that we can relate in peace to God or to anyone with anything external. Child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Don't lose sight of that. The love of God for a little while must still be expressed through one body to another, because the real vision is still so dim. And everyone can use their body best by enlarging their perception so that you can see the real vision. Real vision is invisible to the physical eye. The ultimate purpose of the body is to render the body itself unnecessary, and learning to render the body itself unnecessary, that is the only real reason for the body's creation. Fantasies of any kind are distorted forms of thinking, because fantasies of any kind always involve twisting perception into unreality. Fantasy is a debased form of vision. Vision and revelation are closely related, while fantasy and projection are more closely associated. Because both projection and fantasy are both attempting to control external reality according to false internal needs. If you twist reality in any way, you are perceiving destructively. If you are projecting and fantasizing in any way, you are twisting reality. And when you twist reality in any way, you are perceiving destructively. Reality was lost through usurpation. I'm going to usurp reality. I'm going to twist reality into my fantasy, is how reality was lost. Usurping reality, twisting reality according to your false internal needs, that produced tyranny. Fantasy and projection, twisting reality according to false internal needs, produces tyranny. I told you that you are now restored to your former role in the plan of the healing of man. But you must still choose freely to devote yourselves to the greater restoration. You are now restored to your former role in the plan of the healing of man. But you must still choose freely to devote yourselves to the greater restoration, because as long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. And complete restoration of the family of God is the only true goal of the miracle-minded. No fantasies are true. All fantasies are distortions of perception by definition. Fantasies are a means of making false associations and obtaining pleasure from these false associations. Now, you can make false associations and try to obtain pleasure from them, but you can do that only because you are creative. But although you can perceive false associations, although you can make fantasies, you can make false associations and try to derive pleasure from them. You can make fantasies. Even though you can make them, you can never make your fantasies real except to yourself. And that's because you believe in what you create. And so if you create miracles, you will be equally strong in your belief in miracles. And then the strength of your conviction, in the strength of your conviction in the miracles, will then sustain the belief of the miracle receiver. And then fantasies become totally unnecessary as the wholly satisfying nature of reality becomes apparent to both the miracle giver and the miracle receiver. Chapter 2, The Illusion of Separation. Introduction. This section deals with a fundamental misuse of knowledge, referred to in the Bible as the cause of the so-called fall or the separation. There are some definitions which I asked you to take from the dictionary, which will be helpful here. These definitions from the dictionary, they are somewhat unusual since they are not the first definitions which are given in the dictionary. Nevertheless, the fact that each of these definitions does appear in the dictionary should be reassuring. And these three definitions are the word project as a verb, which means to extend forward or out. And then there's the word project, which is a noun and defined by a plan in the mind. And then the word world definition in the dictionary, a natural grand division. Project, project, world. We will refer later to projection as related to both mental health and mental illness. We have already observed that you can create an empty shell, but you cannot create nothing at all. This emptiness provided the screen for the misuse of projection. The Garden of Eden, which is described as a literal garden in the Bible, was not an actual garden at all. It was merely a mental state of complete need lack. Even in the literal account, it is noteworthy that the pre-separation state was essentially a state of mind in which man needed nothing. The quote, tree of knowledge is also an overly literal figure. These concepts of the Garden of Eden and the pre-separation state and the tree of knowledge, these concepts need to be clarified before the real meaning of the separation or the quote detour into fear can be fully understood. To project, as defined above, is a fundamental attribute of God, which God gave to God's creation. In the creation, God projected God's creative ability from God Himself, to the souls God created. And then God imbued God's creations with the same loving will to create. It's how God projected. It's how God projects. In God's projection, there is no emptiness. The soul has not only been fully created, but the soul has also been created perfect, which means there is no emptiness in the soul. Because of the soul's likeness to its creator, the soul is creative, and no child of God can lose this creative ability. No child of God can lose their creative ability because the creative ability is inherent in what you are. But you can use your creative ability inappropriately, and whenever you project, you are using your creative ability inappropriately, because projection always implies that some emptiness or lack exists in you, and that it's in your ability to put your own ideas in this emptiness instead of truth. Projection always implies that some emptiness or lack exists, and that it's in your ability to fill this lack with your own ideas instead of truth. If you consider carefully what this process of projection entails, the following will become quite apparent. In the process of projection, the first assumption is that what God created, you, can be changed by your mind and made to be empty. The first assumption in projection is that what God created can be changed by the mind of man. The second assumption within projection is the concept that what is perfect can be rendered imperfect or wanting, and that concept is accepted. The third assumption in the process of projection is the belief that man can distort the creations of God, including themselves, and then they accept that assumption. And the fourth assumption in the projection process is the idea that since you can create yourself, then the direction of your own creation is up to you. These assumptions, they are all related. And all these assumptions are distortions that represent a picture of what actually occurred in the separation. Now, none of these things, none of these assumptions in separation and lack, none of that existed before the separation, and nor do they actually exist now. The world was made as, quote, a natural grand division. The world was made as a projecting outward of God. And that is why everything that God created is like God. Projection as undertaken by God is very similar to the kind of inner radiance which the children of God inherit from God. That's the way God projects, from an inner kind of radiance, an inner kind of radiance which we inherit from God. And that's how we create, and that's how we project, by an inner kind of radiance. It is important to note that the term, quote, project outward, necessarily implies that the real source of projection is internal. And this is as true of God as it is of us. The world, in the original connotation of the term, included both the proper creation of man by God and the proper creation by man in his right mind. The proper creation by man in their right mind required the endowment of man by God with free will, because all loving creation is freely given. All loving creation is freely given, free will. Nothing in these statements implies any sort of level involvement, or in fact, anything except one continuous line of creation in which all aspects of creation are of the same order. When the, quote, lies of the serpent were introduced, they were specifically called lies because they are not true. When man listened to the lies of the serpent, all the man heard was untruth. And you don't have to believe, you don't have to continue to believe what is not true unless you choose to do so. Because all of your miscreations can literally disappear in the twinkling of an eye. Why? Because all of your miscreations are merely visual misperceptions. Your spiritual eye can sleep, but a sleeping eye can still see. and what is seen in dreams seems to be very real. The Bible mentions that, quote, a deep sleep fell upon Adam, unquote, but nowhere is there any reference to Adam's waking up. The history of man in the world as man sees it, has not yet been marked by any genuine or comprehensive reawakening or rebirth. And a comprehensive reawakening or rebirth for man is impossible as long as man projects in the spirit of miscreation. But it still remains within man, however, to project as God projected God's own spirit to man. In reality, this is your only choice. In reality, this is your only choice, to project as God projected God's own spirit to you. In reality, that's your only choice because your free will was given you for your own joy in extending the perfect, like God did to you. All fear is ultimately reducible to the basic misperception that you have the ability to usurp the power of God. It can only be emphasized that you neither can nor have you been able to usurp the power of God. In this statement that you cannot usurp the power of God lies the real justification for your escape from fear. Your escape from fear is brought about by your acceptance of the healing plan of man, which is a plan which places you in a position to realize that your own errors never really occurred. Your escape from fear is brought about by your acceptance of love's plan, which is a plan which places you in a position to realize that your own errors never really occurred. You didn't usurp the power of God to create yourself or to change yourself from how God created you to be. The healing plan of man is a plan which places you in a position to realize that your own errors to make yourself and to change yourself never really occurred. You have not usurped the power of God. When the, quote, deep sleep fell upon Adam, only then was Adam in a condition to experience nightmares, because Adam was asleep. If a light is suddenly turned on while someone is dreaming a fearful dream, that person may initially interpret the light itself as part of their own nightmare and be afraid of it. However, when that sleeping person awakens, the light is correctly perceived as the release from the dream, which is no longer accorded reality. It is quite apparent that this release from the nightmare does not depend on any kind of, quote, knowledge, which is nothing more than deceiving lies. The truth which illuminates rather than obscures is just the knowledge which not only sets you free, but which also shows you clearly that you are free. The knowledge which illuminates not only sets you free, but clearly shows you that you are free. Whatever lies you may believe are of no concern to the miracle which can heal any one of your misperceptions with equal ease. The miracle makes no distinctions among misperceptions. The miracle's sole concern is to distinguish between truth on the one hand and all kinds of errors on the other hand. Some miracles may seem to be of greater magnitude than other miracles, but remember the first point in this course, that there is no order of difficulty in miracles. In reality, you are perfectly unaffected by all expressions of lack of love. And these expressions of lack of love, they can be either from yourself and others, or they can be from yourself to others and from others to you. These expressions of lack of love. Peace is an attribute in you. In you. You cannot find peace outside. Peace is an attribute in you. In you. You cannot find peace outside. And all mental illness is some form of external searching for peace. And mental health is inner peace. And inner peace enables you to remain unshaken by lacks of love from without. And inner peace makes you capable through your own miracles of correcting the external conditions which proceed from lack of love in others. The reinterpretation of defenses. When you are afraid of anything, you are acknowledging its power to hurt you. Remember that where your heart is, there is your treasure also. This means that you believe in what you value. And so, if you are afraid, you are valuing wrongly. human understanding will inevitably value wrongly. And by endowing all human thoughts with equal power, human understanding will inevitably destroy peace. Human understanding values wrongly, and that's why human understanding destroys peace. And that is why the Bible speaks of, quote, the peace of God which passeth human understanding. This peace that passes human understanding is totally incapable of being shaken by human errors of any kind. And this peace which passes human understanding denies the ability of anything which is not loving, not of God, to affect you in any way. This peace that passes human understanding is a peace that is totally incapable of being shaken by human errors of any kind. And this kind of peace, which passes human understanding, denies the ability of anything that is not of God, not loving, to affect you in any way. Now, this is the proper use of denial. Denying the ability of anything not of love to affect you in any way. This is the proper use of denial. This is a kind of denial that's not used to hide anything, but to correct error. And this kind of denial brings all error into the light. And since error and darkness are the same, this kind of denial corrects error automatically, because this kind of denial brings all error into the light of truth. True denial is a powerful protective device. You can and should deny any belief that error can hurt you. And this kind of denial that error can hurt you, it's not a concealment device. It's a correction device. And the right mind of the mentally healthy depends on this corrective device, this correct and proper use of denial. The right mind of the mentally healthy depends on this proper use of denial. You can do anything I ask. Anything I ask. And I have asked you to perform miracles, and I have made it clear that miracles are natural, miracles are corrective, miracles are healing, and miracles are universal. I have made that clear. There is nothing good that miracles cannot do. But miracles cannot be performed in the spirit of doubt. God and the souls God created, they are completely dependent on each other. Why? Because the creation of the soul has already been perfectly accomplished, but the creation by souls has not already been perfectly accomplished. God created souls so God could depend on them, because God created souls perfectly. God gave God's souls God's peace, so that God's souls could not be shaken, and so that God's souls would be unable to be deceived. And so whenever you are afraid, you are deceived. Whenever you are afraid, your mind is not serving the soul. And when your mind is not serving the soul and you are afraid, this literally starves the soul by denying the soul's daily bread. God offers only mercy. Your words should reflect only mercy, because mercy is what you have received, and mercy is what you should give. Justice is a temporary expedient. Justice is an attempt to teach man the meaning of mercy. Justice is an attempt to teach man the meaning of mercy. And justice's judgmental side arises only because man is capable of injustice, if that is what man's mind creates. You are afraid of God's will because you have used your own will, which God created in God's likeness, to miscreate. You're afraid of God's will because you have used your will to miscreate. You are afraid of God's will, love, because you have used your will to fear. What you don't realize is that the mind can miscreate only when the mind is not free. An imprisoned mind is not free by definition. An imprisoned mind is possessed or held back by itself. An imprisoned mind's will is therefore limited. An imprisoned mind is not free to assert itself. The real meaning of, quote, are of one kind, which was mentioned before, is are of one mind or will. And when the will of the family of God, when the will of the souls of God and God are one, their perfect accord is heaven. When the will of the souls of God and God's soul are one, their perfect accord is heaven. Denial of error is a powerful defense of truth. And you will note that we have been shifting the emphasis from the negative to the positive use of denial. As we have already stated, denial is not a purely negative device. The positive use of denial results in positive miscreation. That is the way the mentally ill do employ denial. The mentally ill employ denial in the negative sense, as a negative device. But remember a very early thought of your own, which was, quote, never underestimate the power of denial, unquote. In the service of the right mind, the denial of error frees the mind and reestablishes the freedom of the will. And when the will is really free, not imprisoned or held back by itself, then the will, the mind cannot miscreate, because the will and the mind recognizes only truth. False projection arises out of false denial, not out of denial's proper use. My own role in the healing plan of man is one of true projection. I can project to you the affirmation of truth. Now, if you project error to me or to yourself, you are interfering with the process of healing. My use of projection, which can also be your use of projection, is not based on faulty denial. My use of projection does involve, however, the very powerful use of the denial of errors. And the miracle worker is one who accepts my kind of denial and projection and unites their own inherent abilities to deny and project with mine, and imposes them back on themselves and others. And this establishes the total lack of threat anywhere. The miracle worker who accepts my kind of denial of error and unites their own inherent abilities to deny and project with mine establishes the total lack of threat anywhere. Together, we can then work for the real time of peace, which is eternal. The improper use of defenses is quite widely recognized, but the proper use of defenses had not been sufficiently understood as yet. Defenses can indeed create man's perception both of himself and of the world. Defenses can distort or correct depending on what defenses are used for. Defenses and denial should be directed only to error. Denial should be directed only to error, and projection should be reserved only for truth. You should truly give as you have truly received. The golden rule can work effectively only on this basis.